Were you guys able to do the brainstorming activity earlier? Good. That should help a lot. Do you guys have any questions about it as you went, or you just feel good?
I'm a little bit confused about like how we're gonna use the current situations in our essay. Like when you mentioned fake news, like how we're gonna link it to the readings that we had.
Right.
I
So
just don't know exactly how you want us to make the link between the two.
no, that's a good question. All right, so think about it like this. A lot of these articles are from like 2017, and so there might be an argument that they made in here that they didn't even consider the kinds of things that we're dealing with right now. So there might be, you don't have to do it, but there might be things that you could bring up that are happening right now with social media or, yeah, like the fake news, the implications, the problems of what comes from spreading false information. We're talking about spreading lies about COVID or whatever. I think someone drank bleach, and I feel like they did it just to just so that they could say that Trump had them drink bleach. I don't know what happened there, but you get what I'm saying. There weren't such heavy consequences of being able to speak whatever you wanted. But now you spread lies about something and it could injure people. So should we still be able to say whatever we want, or should there be some kind of censorship? Like Germany, back when I first assigned this paper, Germany had just made laws about regulating hate speech specifically on any kind of social media platform like Facebook. So American platforms had to then regulate the speech in Germany. So Twitter, Facebook, or they would get fines in that country. So similarly, now that we are censoring things, like even our president is getting censored by Twitter, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that.
Is this something that's acceptable? Is there an alternative, like maybe, so some of the fact-checking ways that they've been doing things at first, or at one point, I think some of them were just straight blocking the material so that you couldn't see it at all. I think things were being taken down off of YouTube. But then there's also another way to do it where you put a fact-checking source under it or next to it, or maybe you have to click on that source before you can view the material, where that source warns you, hey, this credible source over here, or this third-party source over here has said that this is false information. So maybe that is enough of censorship. You're not actually stopping people from getting to the material, but you are warning them about it. That's the thing. Who's the third party? Like, you can't even trust your government to regulate things properly, like just for your own health benefits. Like food and drug industries are all just, our government has done a very bad job at that, because wherever the money is, they'll let it slide, or whatever makes them look better. So it's really hard to then give such authority to a third party, or an authority who will then judge something as truthful or not. But if you make it so that people can still see the information and then they can weigh it against what is saying that it is flawed, that's a different alternative that's not censoring it. You get how, like, we're talking about making something legal or illegal here, but there are so many other things you can do without making it illegal, but maybe that is still something that has to be put into play, unless you're just like, yeah, no, keep it how it is. I love how things are going right now. So you see what I'm saying, where things like the fake news stuff, that could all be applicable depending on what argument you're deciding to work against here. They might be saying that this is totally fine, or maybe this isn't, but they definitely haven't dealt with the things we're dealing with right now. So I would say try to incorporate them if you see that that's a thing that you could apply there, but I'm not expecting you to bring that into every body paragraph and to just try and make it work. You should only try to make it work if it looks like it'll work, you know, if it'll apply properly. Like the other guy, I think, that we talked about last time. Yeah, Thane Rosenbaum's Should Neo-Nazis Be Allowed Free Speech? He goes over some examples of neo-Nazis walking through a street. I think another person goes over that too. Walking through a street in a town, doing like a march where there was a higher demographic of Holocaust survivors. So that's That's something where they're literally doing it. But we have the ability now with the internet and with how even we're stuck inside now. So the only way people can really experience the world right now is through being stuck inside and watching things on a screen. So with how easy it is to get things in front of people's faces now, I mean, what do you do? Because sure, that is a problem, or that's more of a problem now than ever, but it's still so much of a problem that the alternative of censorship is the right answer? So applying their arguments to current things might be enough to dismantle their argument. Who knows? It's really up to you guys. So that also kind of gives you a way of using other sources. When I say using, like, you have to use at least 4 outside sources, sure, the statistics and things like that are really helpful, but if you can point to a current event, that might be enough as a source to disprove something. So it's really just giving you more to work with. Does that sound good? Or
Yeah.
Cool. What else do you guys have? Any other questions or things that you were struggling with along the way as you were doing that exercise?
I was kind of having trouble. For one of the points I had put, free hate speech causes emotional trauma and Americans should be punished for hate speech. But I feel that we should continue to protect our free speech rights, but people deserve punishment for hate speech.
So you're saying there should be punishment for hate speech? Okay, so yeah, to what degree then would that be? That would be in some way regulating speech. It doesn't mean everyone goes to prison. There could be a fine, but what kind of speech? How would you define speech that's hateful? And then what is the consequence if someone comes out saying some racist stuff? Like, look at Roseanne Barr. The government didn't have to fine her. She just got straight up fired because her employer, the TV channel, didn't want anything to do with having one of the people who represents them speaking that kind of stuff, regardless of if it was on air or off air, right? She just did it in her personal tweets or whatever. But because she is a face for them, yeah, they fired her on the spot without even hearing her response. The next morning she woke up and she was fired, So like that kind of thing. I mean, compared to a fine, she just lost like millions of dollars. She lost her income. So like, think about that kind of consequence too, being ostracized by the rest of society just by simply voicing those views. Is that enough of a punishment? Or should there be something where the government steps in? Because when the government steps in, it's something that we're not in control of anymore.
Can you, Professor, give us examples of, just as in general, like what are we going to use the source for? Let's say if I'm going to talk about the Black Lives Matter and I find an article about it, how would I use that source in my essay? Like, why would I need more than one if I'm just making one point, Because I think what you said, that the argument should be off of our own decision on the matter, right? Not like we're going to take someone else's.
Right. Okay. So you have in these directions here, I gave you bullet points on a body paragraph. So each body paragraph should have this. So you have a claim, a quote from the opposition, and this doesn't necessarily, like, let's say you're taking multiple paragraphs to argue against that thing in the opposition. Then in the next paragraph where you're still talking about the same thing, you don't have to necessarily have another quote from them because you already stated what you're arguing against, and it's such a complex point that you needed multiple paragraphs to go against it. That's fine. You may want to only discuss each part of the thing at a time. Maybe you need to bring up the smallest section that you're still going on for your opposition in the next paragraph. That's also fine too. You want to make sure that your reader can follow you, that you haven't lost them. So you may need to refer back to it, a smaller section of it. But then what you're talking about here is you're mainly going with your own argumentation, but why should your reader trust your opinion over this other person's opinion? So since this essay is now in the realm of value, you want to back up your argument, that is opinion, based off of facts. So you don't have to bring in a bunch, but you should definitely bring in something that will back up why you believe something. So you're right. You want to argue something that's opinion from your own perspective, but you want to be able to justify it. So you have a criteria, like you think everyone should be free to say whatever they want, or you feel like you need to protect minorities, people who don't have as much power as other people. That could be a criteria. So you justify all that stuff, but then explain why. So we're in the land of the free. Everyone has the same rights. Yeah? Then why are there still people who have less power or less agency than other people? You may want to point to that. You could bring in a statistic that points to it. You could bring in a law. Maybe there's some kind of law that actually hinders because systemic racism or something like that. You don't necessarily need to bring in a bunch of sources for that one thing. You just need enough depending on whatever your claim is. So yeah, you'll have your claim, which is directly connected to it, right? It's going to lead into the quote from your opposition. And then you're explaining why you believe there's something wrong with it. But then your support, you always want to have support in some way. And that can be any of these things, statistics, historical. It could even be like a current event thing. Obviously, you want to find it from as credible of a source as possible. So that could be newspapers and things like that. They're reporting, maybe they have an eyewitness testimony. Remember what we said about eyewitnesses, that just because this happened to one person, it doesn't mean that that's how it is for everyone. Especially, I mean, you're kind of making an argument kind of about that stuff right now. Well, you may be, that not everyone has the same experiences in America. So, yeah.
So basically, I use the sources as like examples of why what I'm saying is right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Most of the time, it's going to fit in like examples. Just remember, you want the strongest examples you can get. Okay. So you really have a lot more to work with. It might seem that it's hindering you, but this is actually helping you. Think about it like this. You're trying to disprove someone else. So when we look at, let's say, this one guy, I believe it's the one that was due on Tuesday, Noah, I believe Noah was talking about the rally in Charlottesville. He brings up how Heather Heyer was killed by a car, like the car drove through protesters. And you can watch video footage of it. You can go on Wikipedia and you can find actually like the layout of where it happened with the march. You can find this stuff online because tons of people have looked at it and pieced together the evidence of what actually happened. So there's the march of racist people, the alt-right people, march of alt-right people going in this way. They have permits. They're doing their march in the exact location that they're supposed to be. Then we have counter-protesters who are Antifa and just anyone else who's against racism and would like to give them a piece of their mind and stop them. The idea of counter speech comes into play here. Now, some of them are right on the march itself, but a lot of them are in streets further away from the march. They're coming to the march, or there's so many people that there's not enough room for them. And so on a side street that's about like a block away from the march is where this happens. And this guy, is he part of the march? Does he represent the people of the march? No matter how racist they are, that's a different argument. What they are saying in their march to this guy who has like a mental illness, who is definitely like loves what they're saying, but he's representing himself and he's not speaking. He's using his car as a missile and he freaking kills someone. Now, this guy in the article decides to use that as an example of what's wrong with letting hate speech exist, with people being able to speak their minds. But that's not speech anymore. That's illegal. That's murder. A bunch of people got injured. You watch that footage, it is grotesque. You are like horrified. You should be horrified if you watch it. So my whole point is, all of that, I said all of that just so that you can notice that your argument, an entire paragraph or whatever it is, might be dismantling the use of this as an example. This person is using this example to justify censoring hate speech, but this isn't a good example. And your whole entire paragraph could just be about pointing to that. And by doing that, you want to bring in your own facts to prove that this is an incorrect example. And so you could bring in
sources to back it up.
Exactly. A source that says that this was in a different location and that maybe there's a testimony from the people who put on the event or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Just make sure you explain that out and you represent every side correctly.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we actually use like an article from the packet that you gave us as our source for our essay?
Yes. Yeah, that will be your opposition. And this is an opposing viewpoint essay. So your whole argument is like you're trying to make your own claim about free speech, but it's all focused as a response to whatever that one person is saying. So you find an argument in what they've said that you're in complete disagreement with, and that you're like, this is so wrong. I can think of so many ways why this doesn't work. Or maybe it frustrates you because it could work, but their application of it or whatever it is completely wrong. You're disagreeing with whatever article you find here. That's what you do pretty much through your whole essay. But the disagreement can vary. It could be, I totally agree with the sentiment. I totally agree that these people are a-holes. In fact, you should definitely say that.
Okay.
You want to qualify that. You want to say, hey, I'm not supporting this cause. However, the way that this person explains that this is wrong, or the application of their claims that we should censor things, would bring things to a worse place. So your argument may come down to, it's far worse to censor things because of what would happen. So although this sucks, this would be way suckier.
Okay.
But yeah, your whole essay should focus as a response to this other person. So you want to quote them, you want to be able to address what they've said, you want to do it correctly. And some of them can get kind of confusing. So even in Noah's thing right here, he says some stuff that is supposed to represent his opposition. And so if you're opposing him, then his opposition is actually your side in a way. So I've had people in the past pull the way that he represents the opposition and then argue against that. And that was confusing. If you don't understand who you're arguing against, because he doesn't necessarily represent that side well. So you want to make sure you're arguing against his argument, not the thing that he's arguing against. Likewise, who's afraid of free speech? So this one's a green article, but I printed things out in gray, obviously. This guy right here is for free speech, but he puts a ton of counter arguments that are actually multiple paragraphs long. And so if you don't understand that this is the counter from here to whatever, and then there's another counter on the next page from here to here, then you're going to possibly argue against something that is not their point. So you want to make sure you understand it. This one's really difficult to get through, by the way. Even the first time I read it, I mean, and the guy wrote it for like some law journal in like Columbia, I think. So it's supposed to be pretty prestigious, and yet his arguments were so wordy and dragged out that it was very difficult even for me to understand exactly which side he was on. And then because of the way he applied things, so this guy, he has like some concepts that work, but his application or what he says counter speech looks like is not what I've ever seen. See how things have gotten a little bit more complicated for this essay?
Oh my God,
Yeah.
yes.
It's building off of all the older stuff.
Last essay?
Yeah, everything is just building off of analysis, right? You had to analyze the things that you were arguing through for the argument of fact essay. And then likewise here, you're trying to bring in as many facts and arguments of fact as you can to justify or prove your argument of value.
Yeah,
right?
I feel like this essay is a little easier than the last one because you're sharing like your opinion, you know? And the other one was more like just based on facts. And I feel like I have a harder time writing with facts than like based on my opinion.
Well, true.
It's just me though.
No, you're right. Most people struggle with the last essay, and that's because I limit it so that you can't go any further, right? And so that is frustrating. Now you can pretty much go anywhere with the essay. You just need to make sure that you utilize the things that you practiced in the last essay in order to justify it. Because that's the thing. The person that you are arguing with, or you are arguing in front of really with this essay, it doesn't matter if someone reads this essay and they already agreed with you. What does it matter? They were already in agreement. Your whole point for even making an argument is to persuade someone who doesn't agree with you. And the only way you can do that is to explain why you believe that, like your criteria, because humans should be able to do this, or this thing hurts humans, so we need to protect the other humans, right? There's got to be some kind of criteria. So you need to explain that out to someone, but then you also need to provide facts so that hopefully they will be persuaded by what you've said. Like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Thank you for explaining it to me and providing evidence so that I could not deny it at all. That's the hope here. The hope here is that you can find your friend that you couldn't stand and you can hand him your essay and they won't read it. But if they did read it, then they would change their mind.
So it's kind of like a persuasive essay, but...
Yeah, it's totally.
Okay.
Yeah, everything should be persuasive. Even your argument of fact essay was you're trying to persuade something that this is a fact, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
yeah, everything is always trying to persuade someone. The ways that applies to everything are frightening, but yeah, it's true.
Can we just take one major point and make the whole essay as of that one major point?
Yes, you can.
Even if it's super broad, like just saying, for example, like freedom of speech is bad, and we could just work against that one aspect of the whole reading.
Oh,
I find it kind of hard to get into the deep part of understanding the readings. I don't want to like read it and understand it wrong and then write the whole essay wrong because I didn't understand my reading.
and that's why you need to bring that stuff to me. So feel free to ask me. So no, you can't just go over the vague thing of it. You have to find a specific argument they're making. Okay, look at it like this. So in Should Neo-Nazis Be Allowed Free Speech? What do you think his overall claim is about that in his article? If that's the question that he starts off with.
So he's basically saying that emotional speech can cause emotional harm and that the United States should limit, like basically just saying that like hate speech causes harm and should be limited, right?
Right. Okay. So this is a perfect example of what you can do here. So you can go more broad or you can go more specific, and going more specific can help. But as broad as you can go with this essay is the overall thing, where if he's saying, should neo-Nazis be allowed free speech, as a question at the beginning, what do you think his answer is through this?
Should be no.
Yeah, he would say, no, neo-Nazis should not be allowed free speech.
Mm-hmm.
At the most general level, you could probably try to make your entire essay argument against that, because he goes through his essay and tries to prove why they shouldn't be allowed free speech. And he goes to places like, because words hurt, like you said, mental anguish can be as strong as physical anguish, right? We talked all about that, and physical anguish can be quantified and sued, and damages can be brought against it. So you could try to make it so that you're going over his larger argument, or you can focus in on one of the angles. Like you said, you could just focus on this aspect of why that doesn't work. So you could go either way. You could go more broad, but don't go too broad. Make sure you're being specific. It's not just
To the reading.
Yeah, to the argument and the reading. And so he may have one or two points about this that you are taking your whole essay to address, whether it's incorrect because of this or something else. Or you could go into just focusing on like one aspect from him. That's really up to you. I would suggest trying to start off narrow. The narrower you can go, the better, because that makes you have to explain things more.
Got it.
And if you realize, okay, well, I did this really well. I did this as well as I can, and it's still only 2.5 pages. Okay, what was another point he made? And now take your thesis statement and broaden it a little bit to incorporate
The extra point.
the extra bit. Yeah.